All right, we're in the process of going live. Hello, everybody. Welcome. This is Monday, January 2nd. It is 7 p.m. We're hosting this series on a roadmap to a moral society. So we have, over the past few sessions, discussed a bit about where we are starting from. Some scientific ideas, some moral ideas, philosophical ideas, the Cartesian Newtonian worldview. We've discussed quite a few points, but there's been a few questions. So we're going to be doing a little bit of review, and then we'll be moving on forward. So we want to, first and foremost, welcome Mr. Hakim, who is here with us. Mr. Gilbert Hakim is the host and someone who has been working to make this presentation available for us. With that being said, please come to clearwaterbaha'is.org, where you'll find more information, and contact us with questions. We're happy to set you up to make sure if you're watching this video, you can join the Zoom meeting next session. We look forward to having you, and we'll be starting this one today now. Thank you.
Great. I think there was some confusion related to quantum mechanics and relations to behavior of humans in general and decision-making process. So I just wanted to clarify this. What we're trying to do is, first of all, is that every atom of the universe follows this physics generally. That means that there is no phenomenon in the whole universe that defies the laws of physics. Now, the question is that why humans are any different? If everybody else and everything else, including religion, falls into thermodynamic laws, why not humans' decision-making should be following the same methodology? And how these opinions are formed. And this is really what we're trying to examine and see, is there such a thing? Ironically, from middle of 20th century, this process of applying quantum mechanics to many different areas of the sociology has been a forefront in terms of development of algorithms and formulas to really show that there are similarities, and algorithmic artificial intelligence has been produced to actually predict, for example, behavior of humans, opinion making. For example, how does a city expands? What parameters makes people move toward this city and the city grows? And when does it plateau? So these sciences are in use today. So these are not basically futuristic stuff. All of these things are being used today. And it's being used in finance. It's been used in basically planning of cities. It's used in Wall Street, and so on and so forth. So this is really, really common, and I'm trying to use this correlation of where did this come from, of looking at sciences and correlate it to really behavior of humans or sociology in general. And can we, because quantum mechanics actually is a statistical prediction of an event that may or may not occur. And this is what quantum mechanics is. Of course, in the basically molecular level, when these activities are occurring. So this is really the whole key, that it applies everywhere in the universe. Now we were trying to harness this, and this process or science called sociodynamics. So that's really what the name of that process is that is being used today. Now, the correlation of the laser
If you don't mind, I want to ask a question of clarification for everybody.
Sure.
Are you saying that scientific principles, discoveries, have affected how our philosophy has developed over time, how we view ourselves and our world around us?
No, the predictability. Right now, we're discussing only mathematics.
Yeah, so the question is, why are we transposing from the concept of science and mathematics? Why are we transposing to the ideal of philosophy? How does that relate? That's the question.
Well, this is the whole point. If I can predict behavior of humans based on variables, and I can predict how they're going to behave in certain situation, so I prevent harm. That's the whole revelation from the ecclesiastical process is promising the same thing. So what we're trying to do is say they're both one and the same thing. That's what we're trying to do. Okay, so when we're looking at, for example, is sociodynamics that is being used, even your traffic congestion is using sociodynamics. For example, they can predict how many left turn or how many seconds the signal of left turn should be on during 4 to 5 p.m. of Saturdays. Through artificial intelligence and behavior of humans, they can actually see and come up with a formula, and they predict what happens 6 months down the road when the gas prices are double what it is today. They can even do that. So it's really a precise science to a degree, of course. But the whole key right now to make our foundation solid is to show first the correlation of these two. So we're not talking theories, we're talking about practical methodology of science that is being used. So we start with laser. If you look at the middle of the screen, you see a flashing lamp. What is a flashing lamp? The flashing lamp is that basically electricity goes through this pump source, which is flashing lamp, flash lamp, and what happens, it excites the basically molecules in the whatever basically medium it has, and by electron jumping to another orbit, coming back, it just sends a photon out. And that's how the lamps work. So now we have randomly these photons are coming out of this pump source, completely random, and they have no relationship to each other at all. Now, when these random photons are hitting crystal, the only thing that crystal does in this basically formula that we're trying to devise is that it's a medium that basically fractionates the light and redirects it. That's all it does. It doesn't do anything else. So what happens is that when these random photons are hitting this crystal, it bounces to the left and right. It just sends them the other 90 degrees, the other directions. And if you look closely, the two mirrors that are on the side, one of them is 100% reflective, the other one is partially reflective. That means when these photons are going back and forth between these two mirrors, a resonance is occurring. And now you're going to see a laser coming out of the partially reflective mirror. Is that clear now? Now, what happened? We through a process of a model, we took random photons and we bunched them together and send them out, so like everybody's agreeing to each other, right? Any questions on this laser? Okay, if not, we're gonna go to the next
I'll ask a question if you don't mind.
Sure.
So, anticipating part of the questions people may have, they just haven't formulated yet, and what was just spoken about. You're saying that the laser is pretty much a bunch of photons inside of it that are going back and forth really, 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 really fast. And there is an area for output that is semi-permeable, meaning there's little tiny holes that allows for something to escape versus every other part of this
Sure.
in this space, this encapsulated
you can
space.
think of it as a colander. Some of it goes through, some of it doesn't.
Okay, so that partially reflective mirror allows some to go through and most of it not, right?
Correct. But if you look closely here, what we have done, this machine that we created takes a random photons and make them all agree to each other and coming out.
Well, what does that mean? So all these photons are agreeing with each other. What does that mean?
That means that they have the same opinion of the routes to take.
So you're saying that the light is in such a way that it's going to go the same way as every other light particle in the same direction with the same intensity.
That's correct. So what happens that somehow we made those random photons agree to each other to basically be as part of a group to come out. That's what we agree. That's what laser is. All right. So now we want to see the same thing. Is it possible to have a basically pump source, like random humans that have their own opinion about things and they're making their own decision, and through a process create an environment that they all agree to something? Let's see whether this phenomenon occurs. And those variables, so the question is that, is there a medium like this crystal that we have that would take the basically random thoughts or random decisions of humans and make them all agree to one another?
So the assumption is that our thoughts that we have influence our direction we take. And like a photon is randomly going in a direction, gas particles, photons, they go in random directions. Whatever direction they're going is where they are, unless their direction changes because of some reason. You're saying that as in a laser, their direction changes with the reason. Likewise, people who have their own reasons for doing things and the directions that they're taking, so too their directions can change as well.
Sure. But overall, maybe I should mention the goal of this talk and how we can engage people to examine all their beliefs. Actually, any law that they believe, whether it's carrying gun or not, whether it's basically abortion is good or bad, or is it right or wrong. So the key really is that whatever we think we know, it's really not ours unless we examine it. And this is what we want to do. We want to move from what I like or dislike, because like or dislike is subjective, it's not objective. For whatever reason you like something or you dislike something. But this changes, the formula changes if you look for what I think is right or wrong, because right or wrong is absolute. And it's objectively can prove something is right or something is wrong. So we're trying to go from a subjective brain of ours to an objective method, so our brain would tell us the truth. Now, we still have the decision to follow our own feeling or our own basically likes. But not knowing what is right or wrong is not basically it shouldn't be considered. You always need to know what is right or wrong. Now, whether you apply it or not is up to you or up to individual. That's the reason I was mentioning that revelation and science are exactly the same. The revelation and science for the period that they're in use are absolute. How it's implemented, how revelation is implemented, it's called religion. But religion has nothing to do with revelation. Religion is application of the revelation. It's like quantum mechanics is a law. How I use the quantum mechanics is a completely different subject. I can use it for doing good. If you look at all those modern devices that we're dealing with, from your cell phone to basically CAT scan, mammogram, you name it, they're all following quantum mechanics. And they're there because of quantum mechanics. So that's a fact. That's truth, which is objective. Same thing is revelation. Revelation is objective. Application of revelation becomes religion, which becomes subjective. It depends on adherence of that religion, how they implement it. They may go right, they may go wrong, but it had nothing to do with revelation. So let's go back. Now we want to, is there any question right now in terms of correlating the laser to quantum mechanics? And we're going to go to that stage to show you actually that. So, okay. So these quantum theory methods, particularly quantum information, have recently begun. Somebody read this, John. Why don't you read this?
Sure. Quantum theory methods, particularly quantum information, have recently begun to be widely applied outside of physics, in cognitive, social sciences, economics, finance, decision-making, and biology. The information laser is a quantum-like model that we propose. The fundamental assumption is the discrete structure of state spaces related to information quantization. The information field behaves similarly to photons in the form of indistinguishable quanta of social energy. The massive flow of data serves as a laser pump. An information selection process by agents under constant pressure of massive repeated information leads to collective resonance effects in this framework, analogous to laser cavity and stimulated emission.
Okay, so here we're trying to basically, we went through these pictures before. It's you have basically sources of information on the top left. Some people produce it, some people consume it, some people magnify it, some people don't do anything with it. And then you have resonator here on the top right corner, which is basically mimicking the laser on the top. And at the bottom, you see these two types of people, greens that actually create and resonate. And because of this creation and resonation, you have a coherent opinion comes out. That means that people, without even their own knowledge, would agree with a process. Same way that the photons agreed through the crystal medium to glue themselves together and come out as one element, which is called laser. And here you have mass media pump field. And we're going to discuss this a little bit later. So radiation processors, which are these green guys. Absorption is the guy, the yellow guy. Spontaneous emission is those guys on that repeat several times to other people, and then mass media pump, which is a biased method of creating opinions and making people like their own views. So let's go to the next. So here, human actors and bots. Remember, what you're receiving, affirmation of your own opinion, is very valuable because it makes you feel good. But reality is, not all of those people that agree with you are real people. You have to understand this. They're bots that are going on and replicating whatever opinion it is that in general. So these are yellow, which doesn't generate anything, and then you have greens. Here, the yellow guy absorbs it. The green guy initiates. Guys send it to multiple people of their friends. So this was the laser that we just discussed, partially reflective mirrors, and then one laser coming out. Now, this is really the whole key here. Basically, as we discussed, the yellow guys absorb, the green guys basically create a narrative and then push it out. And the mass media is feeding this process. Now, this is the important part that I was missing last time. How this polarization of narrative by media is occurring is this. It's the same media pumping different information, majority of time contradictory of each other to different people. And that's what they do. So there is an echo chamber, and why do they do this? Is because they don't want you to get off their platform. So they reinforce whatever you think. And based on your behavior and communication and what you buy and who you listen to, because they have all this information. Through artificial intelligence, they find out which radio stations or movie, basically TV channels you look at, which to basically Facebook, they know who your friends are, whether they're leaning left or they're leaning right. So they basically formulate opinions that belongs to that group and pushes it to them. And of course, the bots are there too. So you think that majority of people that agree with you. Ironically, both left and right do the same thing. They do the same thing to the right guys. So now this is how the laser correlation and sociodynamics works. And this is why you see that United States is polarized. The reason is they don't talk to each other. There is no way that the left side of this screen would ever know what the right side thinks, because they listen to their own basically narratives from media that they're receiving information, they regurgitate it, pass it along, and magnify it. So they think that the world is, those are, the other guys are riffraffs. You know, they don't know. Ironically, the right side thinks the same way of the left side, because they don't even know what their opinions are. Because the media, social media here, is pumping the narrative that they like and they agree with, because they want to keep them there. The same way on the left side. So the question really, what we're trying to do here, and this is the basis of the talk, relates to, we want you, every one of you, to examine your own beliefs from perspective of, is abortion good? Is alcohol good? Is carrying gun is good? Is child labor good or bad? But we don't want to do that. First, you need to find out whether those items are right or wrong, not good or bad, because that's subjective. So for you to examine, how did you come about thinking that abortion is good? So how did you come about to think abortion is bad? So now what we're trying to do is go back to science and revelation and see whether, because both of them are absolute, defining what is right or wrong. Is everybody clear so far? Any questions? So if you think that you're for, let's say, abortion, this idea may have been put by media into your head. This may not be your opinion. So the only way you can finalize, you still have that option of agreeing with it, but you don't have an option not to know whether abortion is right or wrong. Is that clear? Okay, so now this process is everybody understood what is going on. So let's go and we prove that basically social media act as a resonator. Not only it takes people's word, and if some idea is trending in left, they start to propagating with their bots. If an idea on the right gets basically propagated, it's becoming very popular. They push it further. So that's how really opinions are being formed in general. So unbalanced polarization of media for self-absorbed people, because now you only are trying to listen to yourself and nobody else. All right, somebody reads this.
When someone says you are wrong, a self-absorbed person does not want to be told that they have the wrong opinion. It seems natural that receiving feedback which validates your thoughts and ideals will always give you that profound sense of satisfaction, of being in the right and having people back you up. But when someone goes out of their way to tell you, hey, you're wrong, or I don't agree with you, it manages to throw you off your guard, and not in a good way. It makes you uncomfortable about your original thoughts. It makes you second guess yourself.
Okay, so let's go to social media. Read on.
Social media as echo chamber for people to reinforce their own ideas. Flooded with polarizing opinions, social media platforms seem to have figured this out. And the last thing that they want to happen is for their users to leave their sites feeling uncomfortable. Uncomfortable users lead to users leaving the platform altogether, and the ultimate goal for social network companies is to appeal to as many people as possible. So, can I ask you a question, Gilbert, real quick?
Sure.
You've, up to this point, you've kind of expressed and you've shown in one way or another that in reality, these platforms are designed to get people to engage. Now, what happens with this when we start to see this conflict between these groups and individuals on these platforms? Uh, why do we not have more conflict? Or are you saying that the algorithms readjust for that and they compensate for it? Or
Of course, they would redirect you. They won't show you stuff you don't like. And if you object, they even suppressed tweets of President of United States. If they do that to him, you have no chance, my friend. Okay?
I can see that. My question is, that would create more conflict in real life, though.
No, it
Or are you
doesn't,
saying
because
that
the
it
people
doesn't?
are not, that's correct. That's where we're going. And this
Hmm.
is really the whole problem, is that the media of 50 years ago, half a century ago, doesn't exist anymore. They're basically polarized, and they're serving their own masters, whoever it may be. If it's the left, their masters are left at putting ads in there. If it's right, these masters are the rights that are pumping ad dollars to basically further their narratives. No, but here we're not trying to go into politics. What we're trying to do is make sure everyone examine their own likes or dislikes, or agree or disagree with what is right or wrong. That's all we're trying to do at this one. Okay, next, let's see. Now, these are the algorithms basically that we discussed. If you want to read it, it should help.
Through algorithms based on user preference, social media has allowed echo chambers to flood their platforms. Companies have figured out ways to collect precise user site interaction data that allows social network platforms to fill every individual's feed to their liking. In this way, every user is offered a feed perfectly curated to their own interests, surrounded with users just like them with similar opinions and goals. From this arises the problems of echo chambers. On social media, echo chambers occur when the same beliefs are repeatedly reinforced in a closed network of people harboring the same ideas, thus shielding everyone in the network from disparaging rebuttals or from others who do not share those same beliefs.
Okay, so this is really what 2 billion people in Facebook basically are showing. This is the map. If you look at the conservative on the right, you see they're clumped into an area. But if you look on the liberal side, right, it's almost empty. None of the liberals on the left listen to anything conservative at all. Maybe some dots, but irrelevant. Same thing goes basically from areas like here, top right corner of liberals. You look at the conservative top right corner, there is nothing there. Now, there are some areas which are common, but it's minimal. But when you're looking at the moderate, you see, neither liberal nor conservative even talk to moderates at all. So now you have a three-pole type of opinions, and none of these guys talk to each other. See, top left corner on the moderate side, it's empty on both sides, liberal and conservative. So you have a three-pole type of opinion, and this is a byproduct of basically this social media. Now, ironically, this is a natural distribution of human belief, and this is bell curve. That means that, ironically, majority of people on all three components of moderate, basically liberal and conservative, majority of them should have been in the middle here, but they're not. And it's because of the media that this phenomenon is happening. 50 years ago, this was the moderate Republicans were on the right of this bell. Moderate Democrats were on the left side of the bell. Now, if you look closely at this, the Democrats trust the media that they hear. Out of 30 sources of media, they 100% believe in most of them, and on the yellow side, they're basically moderately distrust. Obviously, the ones that are on the right side, they distrust. Republicans don't trust anybody, and they've been fooled even by their own media. So they try to get the information themselves. And this is really Pew Research did this, which is quite intriguing. And this is a byproduct of journalism is disappearing from America, because they're only migrate toward what the narrative is in general. So this polarization of media, somebody reads this? John?
Yes. Political polarization is the divergence of political attitudes away from the center towards ideological extremes. Most discussions of polarization in political science consider polarization in the context of political parties and democratic systems of government.
So what does it mean? We're going to go examine that also. But if you look at the bell curve is, I'm sure you guys remember from university that the scores that you were getting, although you may get 40 out of 100 and somebody was getting 10 out of 100, the professor would come and basically put it into this bell curve. That means that the person that was getting 40 now it's augmented to become 90 out of 100, and the person that was basically 20 middle of the scores becomes 50. So this is bell curve generally that they apply and show you that majority of people opinions fall into the middle. Meet expectation, below expectation, seriously underperformer, then you have above expectation, and then excellent performance. So this bell curve has been applied everywhere for any scientifically examining process. So here, remember those three groups that we were discussing? Now, in the Congress now, you have a tripolar, and the independents are almost washed away. The right always does opinion of the right, the left always does opinion of left. But here on the top right corner, this should have been the real picture, not what we currently have. And the reason is that because the elected officials that you have, they have no vote. You think they have a vote, but if you go examine people that your Congress people that vote, 95% of the time they vote party line. That means that they're not making any decision. Those people on top of the party are making decision for everybody. Same thing on the right side. So this polarization occurs because we deviated from the process of basically exchanging information, getting the same information to both parties and make them talk to one another. So here, there is another phenomenon. So here, this should have been the picture, that majority of laws that are passed by the moderate, where in reality, the pendulum goes all the way to the left, and when the Congress changes, goes all the way to the right, which is highly abnormal. So this is what we're dealing with generally. And moderates are usually ignored in the middle. So instead of basically how the laws are passed, even the president, especially on the left, They bypass Congress completely by issuing executive order. So they completely bypass. For example, Obama during his presidency issued 3,700 congressional executive order. And nobody could do anything. Of course, most of them got reversed when next guy came in. So again, we're moving away from democracy as they were talking about. And it's because of these types. So what is happening is that who is basically left in the cold is the taxpayer, basically. So this is how the chart looks like. You have whoever gets to the top, push the pendulum to the left. If they're left selected, whoever on the right pushes to the right. And this was really interesting chart to show how much of your power you want to give to the government. If you look closely on the left side, you have classical anarchists. On the right side, you have anarcho-capitalists that they don't want any law, only capital works. And here you see again different names that you go to the North Korea's Kim Il-sung, which is an absolute basically communism or communistic and fascistic type of government. And here on the right side, you see, again, looser control of the government. So people on the left think that everything is free. Government is supposed to take care of you, give you healthcare, pension, medicine, education, whether you want it or not. On the right side, say, no, you're responsible for your own actions or whatever you want to pursue. And depends on the control. Unfortunately, we see as you leave the control to the government, you look at countries like Venezuela right now, which is, I think, one of the richest countries from natural resources, and their population is in abject poverty because of the fundamental pursuit of socialism. Okay, so I guess we discussed this sociodynamics before, and we discussed that this sociodynamics works in logistics model, like growth of situation, like growth of a town. The same quantum mechanics diffusion model. So there's a logistic model, diffusion model, distribution of model like disease. How does disease spread? They can even predict these things through sociodynamics. Rumors, norms, technologies, knowledge. How does it dissipate? How fast it grows? Gravity model, migration, exchange of goods, traffic volumes. So these are, again, another model. Another one model, which is game theory, which is social cooperation, social competition, optimum economic outcome. These are being used again in Wall Street and economic predictions in general. But here we're really interested in the decision model, which is a collection of arguments which are in favor or of one or another alternative. So what we were trying to discuss here is we're really interested in the decision model. We want to give a tool to our audience that they could examine right or wrong and then put their current opinion on the side and see whether their opinion matches right or wrong. And you have to be cognizant that that opinion that you generated may not be even yours, because it's resonated with whatever majority of the country thinks, although it may be fictitious because it's concocted by these media sources. So we have to be careful of what you like or dislike, maybe not your own opinion in general. So we go to the Declaration of Human Rights, and these are basically the majority of the, I think it was 1949, for the first time, humanity got together and defined human God-given unalienated right of each individual. And eventually they made 180 countries sign off on it. Besides few, maybe a couple of dozen countries that disagreed with it in general. But we wanted to know that this monumental advancement that came in the middle of 20th century, how did it come about? So we want to really correlate this with the revelation. Now, was Revelation predicting these things or announcing them in the middle of 19th century? Where did these ideas came from, actually? What was the source of it? If we believe that revelation is absolute in terms of right or wrong, then humanity slowly applies it. On paper, of course. When you're saying equality of man and woman, I'm sure majority of women disagrees with this, that although it's on paper, but it hasn't been implemented properly. And they actually made women commoditized women in this country. And of course, in the Western culture. Quote unquote, beautiful people. And that's really what people are moving to become one, because the value is in how you look, not who you are, generally. So this is really the key. And going back to the original idea of using sociodynamics, now we want to create a tool and one by one examine these revelations and advancement in the Western culture and see whether they actually agree or disagree, and which one is right or wrong. And this is really the whole process that we're trying to go through to make sure we give to our audience a tool to examine, find out whether their opinion falls into the right or falls into the wrong side. So far, any questions? No? Okay. So this is good to give credit to Eleanor Roosevelt. Somebody reads this?
Drafted by a UN committee chaired by Eleanor Roosevelt, it was accepted by the General Assembly as Resolution 217 during its third session on 10 December 1948 at the Palais des Châtelet in Paris, France.
That's good.
Of the 58 members of the United Nations at the time, 48 voted in favor, none against, 8 abstained, and 2 did not vote. The abstaining countries were USSR, Poland, Ukraine, Belarus, Czechoslovakia, Yugoslavia, Saudi Arabia, South Africa, respectively communist, religious, totalitarian, and apartheid states.
So now you see exactly why people, those countries didn't. In one case was because equality of men and women was mentioned, another one equality of races, and the other one was, which is USSR, Poland, Ukraine, Belarus, and Czechoslovakia, They didn't want personal, basically, ownership. You see, in socialism, and often people mistake socialism, and they don't quite understand it. Socialism means that no individual has property. All properties belong to the state, and you're an employee of the state that is given to you based on your input of productivity. You would be given loan of property or other car or anything else to use. So you're basically is a modern slavery, actually, socialism. Although they provide a lot of goods and services free of charge. But reality is that anywhere in the world you look at socialism, it has failed miserably. Abdul Wahab mentions that Baha'i religion actually refutes socialism to its nth degree because it's destructive. When you take incentive away from people to do the best they can, they don't. And this is reality. Okay. John, you want to read?
This declaration has several virtues as a starting point. First, it is rooted in a tradition of human rights thinking exemplified by the U.S. Bill of Rights and the French Declaration of the Rights of Man, which have been touchstones for law in Europe and the Americas, and influential in major countries of the global South, such as India. I actually don't know what it means, major countries of the global South. Second, it is relatively widely subscribed to throughout the world, insofar as its basic provisions have been subscribed to throughout the world. Have been adopted by many United Nations member states through subsequent UN covenants. Third, the Baha'i Faith was a recognized non-governmental organization during the formulation of the UN and submitted position papers on its provisions, and the declaration has been endorsed as contributing to world peace by the Baha'i Universal House of Justice.
Actually, Baha'i religion was the first non-governmental agency organization in United Nations. And as you see, we're going to see the influence of the revelation, latest revelation, in terms of objectively defining what the human right is. During the last dispensation in Islamic doctrine, there was no individual right. Now there is, but the source of it didn't come in 1949. It came in mid-1800s. And that's really what we want to show. Next. So we need to define the rights, Jeremiah.
Drawing on the work of James Nichol, rights are specific norms to which a high priority must be given, and which human beings are obliged to strive to implement. Human rights are universal. Much early modern thinking about civil rights, from Locke to through Jefferson, saw these rights as deriving from a person's status. Thus, rights pertain primarily to propertied white males who were subjects of a particular crown or citizens of a particular republic. The idea that persons have rights by virtue of being human, rather than by virtue of their citizenship or ownership of property or some other qualifying characteristic, is new in the world history and develops during the 19th century.
Right. So this particular process was really invented in mid-1800s through the revelation itself. Even people that were talking about mid 1800 of people like Locke or Kant, Immanuel Kant, they really saw themselves as classes and rights that are associated to their class, which in Baha'i religion in 1800 broke all these barriers. And the assumption in the prior dispensation was that basically a human is an animal that has ability to basically reason. And through Islam, he would cherish that soul of and create that progress of the soul of that basically animal being. In Baha'i religion, it's opposite that your soul is who you are, your spirit. Of course, spirit emanates from soul. So your soul is in charge and your body is loaned to you for duration of this minute 100 years maximum that you're going to be on earth, and then it's going to propagate and stay in the spiritual realm forever. So this is really where the basis of the Baha'i religion concept is, which is completely different than prior dispensation, including all those moral basically philosophers that came in the 1900s and 20th century as well. Okay, let's go read, please.
Baha'i references to human rights. Most world religions' scriptures do not include the concept of a civil or human right. That human beings have rights, however, is asserted by Baha'u'llah on more than one occasion. Addressing the monarchs of the world, he instructed them to safeguard the rights of the downtrodden and punish the wrongdoers. He felt that the despotic governments of Iran and the Ottoman Empire had wrongfully denied him his rights. In Tehran in 1852, Baha'u'llah was falsely accused of sedition and imprisoned in a horrifying dungeon for 4 months before being acquitted and exonerated.
Now you see that why Baha'u'llah came out of Iran, because that was the most dilapidated, backward, basically society on earth. The legal system, ecclesiastical system, political system, they were all corrupt to this nth degree. And all those atrocities applied to Baha'u'llah. And it's a blueprint and reflection of those ills of society that formulated the revelation itself. As Baha'u'llah mentions, manifestations of gods are doctors that are sent. Of course, their spirit is ancient. It's not like ours that is born at the time of conception. And they carry by seeing the ills of the society and formulating remedy for those. And that's really what revelation is all about. Next.
Baha'u'llah, as has been seen, employed the words rights, huquq, especially in opposition to tyranny and arbitrary rule. Baha'u'llah was critical of liberty in the sense of moral license, and like the formative Republican thinkers in the U.S., would have rejected the John Stuart Mill notion that individuals had a right to behave as they pleased, as long as they harmed no one. Few religious thinkers, in fact, could agree that private morality is unimportant or that victimless crimes, such as prostitution, should be legalized. In the Most Holy Book, he criticized liberty license for leading to sedition or public turmoil, fitna, and to immorality. On the other hand, he did not reject the positive aspects of liberty, writing, "We approve of liberty in certain circumstances and refuse to sanction it in others." True liberty, he said, lay in obeying God's laws. But among those laws, ironically enough, were many prescribing political liberties and rights. This is why he said he approved of liberty under some circumstances, but not others.
Go ahead.
Baha'i references to equality. Baha'u'llah characterized his policy of allowing Baha'is to consort peacefully with members of other religions, read their scriptures, and wear Western clothing as the bestowal upon them of liberty, hurriyat. Already by 1875, Abdu'l-Baha was arguing to Iranian conservatives regarding European conceptions that liberty, hurriyat, with regard to the general rights of individuals who, you're going to have to say that, sorry.
حقوق عمومیه افراد.
Umumiye afrad is not contrary to prosperity and success. These rights are in Baha'i thought to be enjoyed by all human beings. Baha'u'llah had insisted on the equality of all in the 1858 hidden words, "Know ye not," he depicts God as asking, "Why we created ye all from the same dust, that no one should exalt himself over the other." He reaffirmed the principle of equality in his most holy book, saying, "Let no man exalt himself above another. All are but bond slaves before the Lord." Indeed, the idea of a set of universal rights was later identified by Abdu'l-Baha as one of the major principles of the Baha'i Faith. At a Baptist temple in Philadelphia on 9th June 1912, Abdu'l-Baha declared that the seventh major teaching of Baha'u'llah is equality of rights. He says that all humans are alike in the eyes of God, and their rights are one.
So let's look at this. So what does this say? It says that there is no human is above another. What does it mean? Any comments?
Is that in reference to why there's no clergy
Exactly.
anymore? Okay. Well, at least in the Baha'i Faith.
That's correct. So the whole process is really changing the methodology of individual equality. Has no references to gender, no references to color, so everyone is equal in the eyes of God. There is no infidel. Does it say whoever is Baha'i is, it doesn't, right? So there is no infidel in Baha'i religion. There is no clean or unclean in Baha'i religion. Baha'u'llah mentioned nothing that God has created is unclean. Now, these are really major aspects about events that were occurring at the time. For example, in Hamadan, the Jews had to patch a David star on their shoulder garment, outer garment. So when it rains, the Muslim wouldn't touch them, or the rain wouldn't drop on Muslims.
Gilbert, can I ask you one question, though?
Sure.
That I believe that this is a question when people listen to this, they're going to ask, okay, there's no infidel now. Why was there ever a concept of infidel to begin with?
Well, it was very simple because the the issue really was they were calling infidel people that didn't believe in God, in a monotheistic religion. They called infidel because they weren't following any rules of law. A good example of it is Cambodia. Khmer Rouge in basically after Vietnam War, I believe it was mid-60s, was a communist country, and they had no God, and they professed they had no God, and they killed half of the population. 2 million people perished because they disagreed with the communism doctrine. Now you see the issues of lack of God, or people of the book, they call them, or monotheistic religions. Under no circumstances, those atrocities that occurred in the 20th century would have occurred if religion of the God was in charge, or adhered to at least. But it was necessary.
Sorry, I have a question.
Sure.
Are you, I think, tell me if I'm wrong, but Jeremiah, did you make that comment because you were wondering why religions of the past have defined why the concept of an infidel exists?
Yeah, only because people are going to perceive, at least the way I've perceived it or I've thought about it, is that infidel has a strong, tends to be negative connotation of how a group of individual views another group of individuals. So I just wanted to understand some of the historical context from a not only from a historical context, but also from a religious context as well.
Well, remember, the reason was to make sure that people don't become atheists or leave their religion. That's how they created this infidel situation, where is anyone that would deviate from the book of God would called infidel.
But was it a way to identify through classification of individuals, of like
course,
labeling
that was the
people,
whole process.
similar to how in the Bible it would say it would refer to the Babylonians, or is it another step, another layer that was added within the Islamic dispensation that expresses more of less of identifying people from a geographical location and expressing more of how people behave? That's what I'm.
No, this is, again, it's just adherence to monotheistic religion. That was the norm, and that was how they would invite people to join and benefit from the basically advancement of the new social order that Muhammad brought in.
But there's an implication of active punishment when someone is an infidel versus someone is like a non-believer.
Of course, they would be shunned from society. They were taxed also. But remember, for example, other religions were taxed during Islamic doctrine, but they were taxed as a less of a tax than, for example, Jews were taxed at 10%. But Muslims had the khums and zakat. Khums means 1/5, 20%. Zakat is about 5%. So the Muslims were paying more than Jews.
But did like the clergy invent this, or
no, this is in Quran.
I see.
No, the Shiites created another. Remember, those funds that were khums or zakat were supposed to be taking care of the orphans and old people and hospitals and so on and so forth. Again, revelation, you have to differentiate revelation from the practice of religion itself, even today.
Yeah, I guess I'm just, because in Christianity, it was, if you don't believe in God, you're going to hell. And then in Islam, they're saying, if you don't believe in God, you're getting punished here and you're going to hell. And
Well,
then the Baha'i
remember,
Faith was like,
yeah,
you're not getting punished at all. You're just going to be further away from God when you die.
correct. But remember, you're just looking at the Christianity of today. When Christians took over, I think Constantine from Roman Empire became Christian, they created a massacre of Jains. Jainism were wiped out basically by Christians.
You're talking about Jainism in India or another
No,
faith?
there were actually followers of Moon. There were many different religions at the time before Christianity.
Right, the Crusades happened and then they just started killing everyone.
Right. No, the crusade was going to the Holy Land after Muslims. That was a different story. But you're looking
I see.
at,
Okay, my mistake.
You're looking at the common era.
Right, that was like post-declaration versus.
That's right. So
the time of Christ. I see.
The first 7 centuries before Muhammad came in at 670. Before that, the atrocities that Christians in the name of Jesus did, although initially they were discriminated against, but they wiped out the other guys when they got into power. But anyway, so the whole key here is we need to produce a methodology and using machine learning language and basically artificial intelligence to go through revelation itself, means Baha'i laws, basically the latest revelation, and examine for ourselves that whether it's right or wrong. And if it's right or wrong, what is our opinion against it? Do we like it or dislike it? Do we agree to it or disagree with it? But the key I just wanted to show here is that do not think that opinions and that you currently have formed belongs to you. It's really important. It's a subjective methodology throughout your life. You have accumulated and you haven't been presented the fact from both sides of the equation. Pick, for example, abortion. Ironically, both sides are wrong. That means that people that are for abortion or against abortion, they're both wrong because they're not applying justice and equity to the process. You can't ask a 14-year-old girl that is pregnant to fund the child to be born. It's not possible. But the right says, no, this guy made a mistake and it is her responsibility. So the right is wrong. The left is wrong because they're killing a human being. So you see now, both of them are wrong. That's why you need revelation. You need an absolute method that describes reality. When you describe the reality, now we want to actually go back into the society and check to see whether societies, individuals, families, countries that violated the Holy Spirit or the latest revelation, what happened to them? Now, from that observation, we can tell whether that law is scientifically right and scientifically wrong. Prohibition of it is wrong. So these are really key elements that we're trying to study generally.
I'm going to ask you one more question, Gilbert, sure. Then I promise I'll let you move on. You're talking about using tools now as a way to try to understand the harmony between science and religion here. What I'm curious about is essentially with each revelation that's happened in the past, weren't similar tools available in some capacity? Because
No,
you don't have the concept of progressive revelation without humanity at whatever stage it's at in its collective
sure.
psychological or
Yeah.
spiritual. Uh,
You see, not in mid 1800, 92% of the people could not read or write. And they had to rely on somebody else to write a letter for them. They had to go to their priest to find out what the religion is, especially Persians that couldn't read Arabic, and they still don't. They pronounce Quran, but they don't know what it says. Now, the reason we are here today is because of the revelation. That's the sociodynamics proves that, and that's what we're trying to do. But when you're looking at what made us to get to this point, when you're looking at thermodynamics, the second law of thermodynamics says that any closed system, when it exhausts its internal resources, energy dies, right? Now we see throughout the history of humanity, there is an infusion, and basically civilization jumps. And if you look closely, you see these jumps occurs right after revelation. Why? Because this revelation comes outside the system, is infusing the outside energy into the system to make it grow. If that wasn't there, if revelation wasn't there, we would go back to basically barbaric time. And this infusion of the revelation is the source of the both spiritual and material civilization. The same way the zenith of Islam during basically between 9th and 13th century was golden age of civilization of Islam, because it broke all the chains of the caste system in the world. So it wasn't possible before Baha'u'llah. But the source of it is revelation. Any other questions, concerns? Okay,
So-
maybe you want to read this and then we can close.
Sure. These rights are in Baha'i thought to be enjoyed by all human beings. Baha'u'llah had insisted on the equality of all in 1858, the hidden words. He says, "Know ye not?" He depicts God as asking, "Why we created ye all from the same dust?" That no one should exalt himself over the other. He reaffirmed the principle of equality in his most holy book, saying, "Let no man exalt himself above another. All are but bondslaves before the Lord." Indeed, the idea of a set of universal rights was later identified by Abdul Baha as one of the major principles of the Baha'i Faith. At a Baptist temple in Philadelphia on June 9th, 1912, Abdul Baha declared that the seventh major teaching of Baha'u'llah is equality of rights. He says that all humans are alike in the eyes of God and their rights are one.
Right. So in the middle of the 18th century, basically white male had different rights than white females. The peasants had the different rights than ecclesiastical people, than legal people, than political people. Now Baha'u'llah comes in and says everybody has the same right. Read this one also.
This equality extends specifically to gender. He wrote in 1913, in this revelation of Baha'u'llah, the women go neck and neck with the men. In no movement will they be left behind. Their rights with men are equal in degree. They will enter all the administrative branches of politics. They will attain in such a degree as will be considered the very highest station of the world of humanity, and will take part in all affairs. He also condemned religious, racial, national, and other forms of prejudice. All human beings are possessed of reason and conscience, according to the Baha'i scriptures, and Abdu'l-Baha spoke of intellect as God's greatest gift to man. And a call for human brotherhood pervades its central text. May all humanity enter the bond of brotherhood, Abdu'l-Baha prayed. Shoghi Effendi spoke of the gospel of peace and brotherhood proclaimed by Baha'u'llah, characterizing chauvinistic nationalism as its negation.
Great. Thank you very much. I think we're coming to the end of the talk. There's no other questions. We'll see you next Monday. John?
I'll close it out for him.
Okay.
Sorry, I was trying to unmute. Sorry. So as you all know, we've been discussing these subjects for a few weeks now. We're going to be discussing next week a little more on the subject of morality and this objective view that Mr. Hakim has been trying to elaborate on. And your questions are very essential so that the explanations that he gives and, of course, responses to questions to further elaborate will allow us to get a little more at what we can take from this, as much as how an objective view can be applied in your own life. With that being said, we'll be meeting next week at 7 p.m. Sorry about that, everybody. We'll be meeting next week at 7 p.m. And this will be again on Monday. It will be at 7 p.m. on January 9th. So Monday, January 9th, we'll be meeting again. And please ask us any questions you have. We'd like to get back to you beforehand or put it into the presentation. Thank you.
Happy New Year to everyone.
Thank you. Happy New Year.
Thank you.
Take care.